So, Carey, you started your company from basically from zero and ended up selling it for $500 million. It's a pretty hefty sum. Could you tell briefly about your like a background overall, and then the story how you came to the point of like growing and selling your company?
Oh, well, my background after getting out of school was insurance, which didn't keep my interest for very long. I started one company, and it had to do with heating and cooling. That didn't keep my interest very long, though unfortunately it didn't keep my interest very long, but it occupied my time for some years. And finally, I started a fan company. I started it, it was interesting enough, I wrote an awful lot of articles for trade publications, and in one of those publications I saw an ad and that about some guys, machinists that had put together a big fan for cows, and I thought, well, that's very interesting. I called them up and I said, well, you know, guys, if this works, I'd be happy to help you, expand your markets. They said, well, that would be great because we've been doing it for a couple of years and we've sold 17 of them. And I found out when I came on, they hadn't really sold 17. They'd kind of sort of given 17 away. And one of the first things they asked me to do was see if I could collect on those 17 fans they sold. Anyway, so that's how it started. We went along and everything was hunky-dory for a while. We decided to part ways. And I took the IP that I had purchased from them and started manufacturing the fans and selling the fans. Now, these are really big fans. They're 6 meters across, used in large industrial and commercial settings. Over the years, we developed various types of fans, but always or almost always they were ceiling fans. It was very interesting. I was involved with it for 19 years. I had what's sort of cool about it was it seemed to me that it was very special, and I was very lucky to be able to do what I was doing. And so I decided very early on to incorporate a program where I allowed or made affordable or available, to people that work for me, an opportunity to have part of the company. And so when I sold the company in 2017, I was able to write checks of over $50 million to these people at the company. And that made me feel really, really good. Wow. It sounds weird, but I mean, there's sometimes when giving away $50 million is not a bad thing. I mean, you change a lot of people's lives. We made a lot of people millionaires. It was a cool experience.
For sure. And then it's a fascinating story. I'm guessing we could talk all day long only about that. But then you moved, you were selling fans, but then you started building a brand also. Could you tell a little bit about that, and how did you discover and then start developing the brand?
Well, I think that what we realized very early was that what we were doing, nobody had ever done before, and we had to explain it. We had to explain the science behind it, the physics behind the air movement, the physiology, how it affected individuals around the fans. So the fans are a very inexpensive means by which to keep a lot of people, especially working in, big factories and warehouses, comfortable, which affects their productivity. But I think it affected the managers even more, because it meant that the people working in those places during the summertime were comfortable and they weren't complaining as much. We realized that very early on that these fans had to be installed on site. Unfortunately, that was a problem because sometimes the companies that bought the fans could install them, but oftentimes not. And that whole thing became a problem. And we realized that if something was wrong or went wrong with the fans, if it wasn't properly installed, if there was a piece missing, or even if there weren't a piece missing, that if we had a third party installing the fans, that it was always blamed on the fan company. And so we had to continually look and get feedback from our customers, and we sold direct, to know what to fix. I mean, to know how to make the product better, because our goal was to make sure that the customer was happy from beginning to end. And that honestly builds brand. I mean, if you are focused on the customer, you're going to build brand. And we focused, in order to focus on the customer, you really have to focus on the people that are working with you, which is really, I don't know if that sounds odd or not, but if you can't expect somebody that isn't pleased or happy with their situation, you can't expect them to present a good face to a customer. You just couldn't do that. And so in order to do that, we developed we paid people 30% more than is average in the U.S. We did all sorts of things. And I think that altogether, in addition to the fact that we were constantly iterating on the fans, improving the performance, improving even the instructions that were printed within the fans, we just focused continually on that experience. And we didn't really take a lot of money out of the company. We put a lot of money into the company to make sure that it was as good of an experience as it could possibly be for anybody buying the fan, anybody working for us. And so it was not complicated. Once you recognize one thing, it all sort of falls in place. I mean, you can't take care of the customer without taking care of the employee, and you can't take care of the customer without taking care of the suppliers. And I mean, it just rolls. It's not terribly complicated. And that builds brand.
Yes, exactly. And then, of course, you mentioned already you faced some obstacles and were able to overcome them. Was there some other kind of like a obstacle as an entrepreneur, as the founder and the manager or the leader of the company that you faced, and how did you overcome those obstacles?
Well, they're always obstacles. If there aren't obstacles, I mean, why get out of bed in the morning? I mean, it's not very interesting. There were a number of things that we overcame. We were very lucky in that the products were exceptionally well built. So we really didn't have any problems on that side. We had some problems. One time we had a problem that related to I won't say a regulatory agency, but something close to it, and having to do with the fire codes, which we overcame, but it took us several years. And it was very, very frustrating because we couldn't talk to these people. They wouldn't tell us what the problems were. We had to figure out, it cost millions of dollars to do this, ridiculous. And I honestly, we were probably into the fans maybe 12 years when this happened. And so now you're talking about a company that's at that point, $100 million, and you have 500 people working for you. And it's like, oh my God, I could lose this. This is terrible. These people, they're terrible people. Or we thought they were. I'm sure they went home at night and felt really good about themselves. But we did overcome that. It was a lot of testing. It was a lot of, we had to shift some software, but we solved all the problems that we could have solved years before if they'd just bothered to tell us about. But again, I think that you always have problems like that. They can be conceivably very bad things, but you can't give up. I mean, well, you can give up at any time. And keep that in mind, because, you can just keep going and then give up. But I think that, I don't know, I had a lot of really, really good people working with me. And I think that that made a big difference.
Okay. And then of course, when you're running a business, like a kind of like a making money, making profits, having a profitable business, like a main key point perhaps. But what's the other important things that you've kind of like learned along your path about what else is important?
Well, I'll tell you one thing I learned is I have zero interest. Well, not zero interest in making money. And we always made money, but I always said that if we had $1 left over from one year to the next, I probably missed an opportunity. That's all. That's the only way that could be explained. And I think that's a good approach. We weren't. I mean, we had to make money to stay in business, but we weren't really in business to make money. I don't know if that sounds odd or not, but I think in terms of building the company, and actually, I wasn't thinking about an exit at all. I really wasn't. But I think in the final analysis, that the fact that we did that we did not take money out, to have a fancy lifestyle or something. The fact that we didn't do that actually built. That's why that's why somebody was willing to pay $500 million for the company. I mean, I think that in some senses it was an investment, and I couldn't make it a better investment than in the company. So it all worked. So making money, I think that making money, it's like getting good grades in school. I mean, it's what you want. I mean, you want to be scored high, but making money is, at the end of the day, it was the experience of going from nothing to something, and then paying those people, that money at the end. It was cool. That was what made it interesting and exciting. If all you're interested in is money, you're not going to make any. I can tell you that. If that's what you're fixated on, it's a waste of time.
All right, that's totally understandable and should be the key to the success for the entrepreneurs. And then look, okay, then you exited, you sold the company a few years ago, and then from an entrepreneur, you decided to turn into as an investor. Why? What happened there? Why are you now an investor?
Well, I don't know. When you're running a company, when you're driving a company, you're very monomaniacal. I mean, you're thinking about one thing all the time. That's all you think about, and you know everything there is to know about what you're doing. And after 19 years, it's the same thing. I mean, you get a little bit, what the hell is this? I mean, it's kind of boring. Yeah, okay, it was boring. And it seemed to me that I liked people that were starting companies and running companies because they were younger and they were fresher and they had great ideas and just interesting things. And so when I sold the company, that's what I thought, well, that's sort of a cool thing to do because you can get to see different things. And over the period that I was doing this, you really do learn a lot, and you see a lot of situations, and it's something that if you've never done it before, if I was able to go back and tell my younger self what I had learned, it wouldn't have taken as long for me to sell the company for $500 million. Actually, I might have sold it for more because I could have stuck with it longer. I don't know. So that seemed like a really cool thing to do. And in the main, I think it is. We've developed a little bit even over the 3 years that we've been doing this. But we feel very strongly, I feel very strongly for the entrepreneurs. I guess I'm more concerned about that side of the business than I am about the money-making side of the business because I don't really need to make money. But I mean, I learned a lot. I didn't know anything. And when we see people today, they're excited, they're motivated, but there's all sorts of little nitty-gritty things that they don't know, that they couldn't possibly know, that they can be helped with. And so that's why we did it.
And there's this one very interesting about your team for the Unorthodox Ventures. These are actually people who work for you for the big ass fans company. And then while you were in the exit process selling your company, you told the buyer, I'm going to keep these 10 people and not give it to with the company. So what was the idea behind that move, and like how did the buyer feel about that? Did they give you a lot of kind of like a negative on that?
No, you're missing it. They were, it was a private equity firm. They don't know anything about business. And so they were the ones that suggested to me that, hey, you can take that department if you want. And it was R&D, business development. And it's like, really? Seriously? Wow. They said, oh, we don't want to pay for them. And I said, well, sure, I'll take them. I'll pay for them. And it turned out it was like 12 people, engineers, people that opened our offices and manufacturing plants in other countries, analytics people, some accounting. I mean, just the whole thing, the entire gamut. And it was crazy. I mean, it was the best people I had because they had been elevated to this position. And so it wasn't hard. I don't think they even knew. I mean, it was ridiculous. It's funny. It's really funny. Yeah. Exactly. So we didn't have a problem with that. They sure as hell didn't. I don't think they know it's gone. I mean, who knows? I mean, all those guys are interested in is cutting cost. And we were lucky enough to keep them because we made an agreement that they weren't going to, get rid of people for, I mean, they weren't going to just start off getting rid of people. And so they had to wait for a year to do that, to any movement on that side. So that was a good thing. So you kind of made a favor for them that they didn't even know. That crazy, right? They don't even know it. You pull their heart out. They don't even, they're fine. They're smiling.
That's super good. And, and how are you now utilizing this team now for the investment purposes?
Well, even though I didn't know in the direction in which we were going in the beginning, it's been very, very useful because we find when we invest, or the companies that come to us, some of them are very young, and they really don't know where they are, what they're doing. And so the first thing we do is say, look, we're going to build a business plan, because very few of these people, they have a business plan they throw on a deck, but it's just complete garbage in the main. Well, always actually. And we say, look, we're going to build this out just almost day to day, what we're going to do, what needs to be done, how you need to do it. And some of these things are really basic sorts of things. I mean, you need to make sure that if you're filing for patents, the patents are filed for, that the patents are well written. You need to make sure that if you've got you need your ERP, you need your CRMs, you need all sorts of just basic things that these gals and guys don't think about. And so when we say, okay, fine, we're going to take this is what it's going to cost to get to break even, which is really what people ought to be concerned about. They shouldn't be thinking about, oh, I can get, I go from my seed to my A to my B to that's just giving your life away for money up front. And so we say, let's see what it costs to get you to break even, which is a hell of a lot less, honestly, than a lot of these people think. And what that does for them is they're able to utilize us as part of the basically the C-suite, if you will, and to get to a point where they actually can have a business that has broken even and still maintain a majority position, which I think is interesting, and I think that's important because I see so many, and we do as a company, we actually counted them up a couple of weeks ago, and there were like 40 of them that we had seen where the founder had considerably less than half the equity. As a matter of fact, there were a substantial number of them that had their equity, the founder's equity, was in single digits. And again, it's not illegal, but from my perspective, that is just, I mean, that's that's why I have a hard time sometimes, well, always actually,
Yeah.
Appreciating the typical VC group, because they take advantage of people like that. And so we're able to do that. I think that's interesting. And the fact that we've got the team, I mean, we've re-engineered products. We've reconfigured formulas for drinks. It's all sorts of stuff that people, it's the sort of thing that would make you stumble and conceivably fail if you didn't have. And I'm not sure there's a banker that has been born, and conceivably there's never going to be a banker born that knows how to do anything like that. And so I think that's what makes us different. And I think that that's what that team, that development team brings to the table. I think that's important.
Yeah, that sounds very unique proposition compared to a lot of other funds out there, for example. And then of course, this sounds like a super special service. Is there kind of like a, let's say you make an investment into some company, they become a portfolio company, then the special services, is it market entry help or like designing, are you charging extra for those, or is it part of the partnership then?
No. It's part of the partnership, because part of our job when we do this is to build a team for the company. I mean, we don't want to be running, a company like that. And so it's building that, and hopefully when we get to break even, what the partner has is it has a complete team. We don't charge for it because that's what we say up front, is it's going to cost this much money. It's an investment on our part, but I think that the way we look at it is it's a value add. And again, if we take a company on, it takes time and money that is not included in, when we do the deal, X amount of equity for X amount of cash. And so when we do it, we want it to succeed, because, I mean, we own a piece of that company, and it's sort of foolish to sit on the sidelines wondering what's going to happen next. I mean, you want to get in there and play. So no, that's the way it should, well, in our opinion, that's the way it should be done.
That sounds good to me, at least. So, and then, okay, let's talk a little bit about like early startup founders and aiming for the success, right? Everybody wants to success. And is there like, what in your view and your experience, what kind of things they need to do to get there? Like, is there some few key points you could list, like they definitely need to put their head straight on the way, and something that could make them or break them, something like this, just a key point?
I think, as I mentioned earlier, building a good business plan, everybody builds business plans. A lot of business plans are just BS. Everybody knows it. You should try to build a business plan that is as realistic as it can possibly be. And that's not taking, there's 10 million people in the country, and I think I can sell to 10%. That gives me a market of it. That's just junk. That's not going to be useful. I think that building the business plan is important. I think that market research is something that is amazingly important, but people overlook it. They don't even think about it. They don't talk to out there. And it's like, how can you do that? I mean, you should really spend some energy on talking to people and doing that research. The other thing is, what I find especially about younger people, and this is weird to me, is that they are reluctant to talk to people. I mean, talk like on the telephone and in person. That's the way you get customer feedback. That's the way you hear what people think. That's the way you want to know as much as you can possibly know about every single thing that you're doing. If you're making a mistake, you want somebody to tell you that. I mean, the worst thing, we see it all the time, is kids will come out of school with some degree, and now they're, studied entrepreneurship, and they have their projects. And all the professors do is pat them on the back, no matter what. It's wonderful. It's got potential. It's got this. That's not. You look at them and you go, what the heck is this? I mean, you really need to get outside of the bubble. It's uncomfortable sometimes, but that's, you might as well face it sooner than later, because you're only young once. And I can tell you that I started my first company when I was 27, which may be really old now. Not really. I don't think it is. No. But there's a lot to be said for starting a company when you're younger. And most of it is you've got a lot of energy. You've got to realize that you don't know a lot about what you're doing, but you have to listen. You have to listen to people, listen to what they say to you. Don't live in a bubble.
Yeah. Okay. We got a couple of minutes left, so like two, I need to cut some questions, but tell me quickly, what kind of thing excites you right now? Is there any like new technology or platform or whatever, like you say, wow, that's really exciting?
I think something that's interesting is, I don't know, maybe we're a little bit long in the tooth for this, and a little bit late to the game, but I don't think so. In terms of bicycles, I think bicycles are pretty cool. I think electric bicycles are pretty cool. I think bicycle transmissions are cool. I like that sort of thing. Yeah. It's got, and I think you mentioned this before, we're really more interested in hardware than software. And so it takes a little bit more time and a little bit more effort to go in that direction. And as we mentioned, I think I mentioned the fact that a lot of the companies that we invest in were started by women, and it's not because we're looking for women to invest in. Okay. It's just because women, for whatever reason, seem to be more interested in hardware, seem to be more interested in shifting the paradigm, making things better in the real world. And that aligns with our philosophy about products.
Well,
so that's always interesting.
I 100% support that the women are more clever and multitasking, many other things that they know how to manage multiple things compared to the guys, for sure. And there's a lot of facts out there that showing that the female entrepreneurs are beating the guys on average. So, and I'm looking. And very excited to hear about the hardware. I wouldn't connect first thing that hardware and ladies might not be my first choice, but hearing from you, I believe that actually now thinking it's true. And very
software is easy.
Yes.
Yeah, software is easy. That's why the guys want to do it. Mm-hmm. It's crazy.
And then on the hardware or whatever is in the shelves of the supermarkets or department stores, who's using their purchase power there also. So and so that's very convenient. Any last kind of like before we wrap up, is there any kind of like on Unorthodox Ventures, you have your team there somewhere online here. What kind of a people or founders are you interested to talk to, or is there something like how do you get in touch and when and why they should do it?
Well, we talk to a lot of people. When we see a product that's interesting, we call. I mean, that's the way we do it. Okay. And so we're fairly upfront about that. I don't know. I think what I've learned over the past 3 years, I should have learned it in God knows before, that the most important thing is not the product, that it's actually the individual that is running the company. Because if that's no good, it doesn't matter what it is. I mean, it could be anything. It wouldn't work. You can't take it to market with somebody that isn't focused, that's not in control. It's a waste of time.
Yeah. All right. Hey, I think we can wrap up with this one. It's excellent. I'm sure a lot of people got really good pointers there and improving their business, and maybe some of them are going to be knocking on the Unorthodox Ventures door soon.
Look forward to it.
Thank you so much, Carey, and have a safe trip back home. Yep.
Oh, thank you very much, Jan. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye-bye.